All right, next up in our wine training series, we have Crisp and Structured. So arguably, I think this is one of our more popular sections on the wine list. I think we could probably argue back and forth of what do people want to drink more, Sauvignon Blanc, right, which makes up a big variety of this section, and or Chardonnay. But first we're going to talk about mainly Sauvignon Blanc and the different parts of the world that Sauvignon Blanc comes from, and then we're going to throw a wild card in at the end of this conversation, right, with Crisp and Structured. So, you know, I think that we cover, you know, right now we're serving very particular varietals, producers, and regions of the world, right? And typically, the regions of the world will always stay, right? We'll have a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, we'll have a white Bordeaux. Very important to know that white Bordeaux is always Sauvignon Blanc. That's a big training point right there. White Bordeaux is Sauvignon Blanc, and then it's typically mixed with Semillon, which kind of gives it that more of that floral note to it. And then another region of France is Sancerre. Sancerre is always Sauvignon Blanc, right? Very, very popular. So, you know, why don't you start out by telling me a little bit about what you think and what our guests need to know about New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
Well, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc has become very popular, especially over the last few years. And the first word that always comes to mind when I'm talking about New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is grapefruit. Grapefruit. These wines tend to be very dry, very racy, like huge stone fruits. You might get things like wheatgrass, green pepper. But I feel like what really exploded the popularity of particularly Marlborough, New Zealand, which is where our Wither Hills is coming from right now, is that really powerful stone fruit grapefruit. You know, you take a sniff of this, and it's almost like I just cut one open. You know, you take a sip, and it's bright acidity with just hints of that kind of stone fruit sweetness to it. Really easy drinking wine. And again, I said these ones kind of sell themselves. You don't really have to talk people into New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. People coming in asking for New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs are going to know exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's someone, because as we taste through these wines, although they're all Sauvignon Blanc, this one, being from New Zealand, stands out so much differently than a California Sauvignon Blanc, which we don't serve by the glass. We do have California Sauvignon Blanc on the wine list in the form of cake bread. But you know, somebody that is looking for New Zealand, if we put them into a white Bordeaux, they're going to think that's not what they're looking for.
Yeah,
right?
They're going to find that one a little too soft.
And I think something that we look for at Blue Island, you know, when we're changing our wine list up, we know we need a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. I think a lot of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc out there isn't very good because it's almost like white grapefruit, and it's like overly acidic to the point of being tart. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not that good acidity. Mm-hmm. You know, so when we picked the Wither Hills in particular for this vintage, what we found was that it had some of those tropical notes on top of that ruby red grapefruit that really makes that wine special. And again, it's I think and I think you said it, but I'll agree with you, is that the drinker coming in looking for this is what they want.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you don't really need to upgrade, resell, try to, you know, unless they're willing to kind of explore, try something else. If somebody knows New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, they drink them all the time, and that's what they're looking for, this is a great one to go for. Easy sell, probably on our top of wines we sell by the glass, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, our top wine by the glass is white Bordeaux, which and it has been that way almost since inception of the wine list. We've always carried some level of white Bordeaux. I lean towards drinking a lot of white Bordeaux. Tell me why you sell this, and why is it the number one selling wine here?
You know, I guess it does kind of make sense that this would be one of the number one sellers. This one, as Sean was saying, is a blend of Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. That Semillon really just kind of balances out a little bit of the raciness and the aggression of the Sauvignon Blanc grape. So you take a whiff of this, and you're not going to notice that same level of stone fruit. You're almost going to get a more melon, a little less tropical, a little more just kind of softer, sweeter fruit. But you take a sip, and
yeah, that idea of sweetness goes away,
it goes
right?
away right there. It's just, this thing is bone dry. It goes perfectly with oysters. It goes great with seafood. Crisp, refreshing, lots of fruit on there, but again, like no real sweetness. But again, not that, like as Sean was saying, not that tartness that you might get from a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. So it makes a lot of sense. This one's just very easy to drink. This one I kind of feel like can almost be like a meal in and of itself. I could sit here out on a patio and just sip on this guy for a couple hours, be perfectly content.
You immediately get the freshness in this wine too. You can tell it's a young wine, it's fresh, these grapes were just harvested. And then the one other part I get on it is that gravelly, like you picture where these grapes are grown in that slate, that gravel, and you immediately get that minerality. Again, that's it. I think it's a great oyster wine. It's just perfect for seafood.
Absolutely.
So, and then moving down the list, probably a staff favorite here.
This is definitely probably my favorite.
So again,
Sauvignon
from
Blanc.
Bordeaux, right, we moved to the Loire Valley, right, in France. Again, Sancerre being from the Loire, 100% Sauvignon Blanc, another French wine, but yet so different from a white Bordeaux, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying, a staff favorite, definitely one of my favorites. I was excited when we started offering these by the glass. Again, 100% Sauvignon Blanc this time, so going to have a little bit more edge to it. It's going to have a little bit more of a crisp palate. You get a lot more of the kind of the wheatgrass. You get a lot more of the. You'll get a little bit of grapefruit on the nose, but it's a lot more vegetal. It's a lot more herbal. You take a sip of this guy, and it's going to be a little more tart on the palate, not quite as much as your New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Very dry, very structured, good subtle fruit flavors. This is a wine for people that love drinking dry white wines. Especially if they've never had a Sancerre before, but they tend to like things like Sauvignon Blancs. Maybe they've played around with a Chablis or something like that before. This is definitely a wine to try to sell them on.
And I would say that Sancerre is known as, and I think this again could be argued, but in the wine world, Sancerre is known as the greatest expression of Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah,
I think that's why people know it, right?
Yeah,
People
I
know
would definitely say that's a good.
You know, someone who's just ordering this knows it, but that's a good sales technique of, you've had the white Bordeaux, you're a regular of ours, let's try something different today. This again is probably the ultimate expression. Some of the most famous wines, come from Sancerre from France, and the expression of it, and then the nuances, the difference, right, comes up, and you really start tasting a lot of different things in this wine. And so, again, our 3 Sauvignon Blancs, New Zealand, really, really pink grapefruity, tropical, white Bordeaux, very acidic, mineral-like, and then Sancerre, the greatest expression of the varietal itself. And then our last by the glass in the section of crisp and structured is a very, very well-known producer, the Hugal. This again is from Alsace, right? We're jumping around the country a little bit, and is what you may lead someone to if they think they want a sweeter white wine. Although most of the Brix content and the sugars are converted to alcohol, but this is made up of Riesling, Gewürztraminer, these wines that are known for having a little bit higher of a sugar content. This, to me, the ultimate summer wine.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually my favorite off this particular list, and like you were saying, this is pretty much your only option if somebody is looking for a sweeter white wine. Again, it's not really sweet, but it does have a little bit of that residual sugar. I consider it very balanced. I consider it to be very kind of dry and crisp, but with kind of a lingering sweetness. Really kind of light, more honeysuckle berry type fruit on there. Riesling is known as probably the best grape to pull out the terroir of wherever it's grown. It's known as kind of the chameleon of the wine world. Wherever you're growing Riesling, it's going to take on the characteristics of that ground more so than probably any other grape in existence. Got a bad rap over the years, I feel like, because people, as Sean was saying, tends to be a little bit higher sugar. A lot of people got used to very sweet Rieslings and that kind of turned them off. But I feel like Riesling is probably one of the most exciting, fun to drink white wine varietals you can do.
And there's a finesse to Riesling.
Yeah.
And Riesling is also such a food-friendly wine, especially with our menu. We have a lot of somewhat of Asian flavors throughout our menu, whether it's the miso sea bass, whether it's the calamari, whether it's ponzu being served with something, and so that sweetness is it. And again, we're using the word sweetness even though it's a very dry wine, but that little bit of residual sugar I think coats your palate and allows it to be prepared for some spicier food. So some other grapes that are in this is that Pinot Gris, which is the same thing as Pinot Grigio. So that's another way to get someone that might be, hey, I'll have the Pinot Grigio, but we want to get them into, quote unquote, a little bit more of a sophisticated wine and turn them on to something, right? That's why we're here, is to offer an experience. So there's also a little bit of one of my favorite varieties is Silvarna is in this wine, which you hardly ever see. So again, a really fun, really food-centric section of the menu that, as a server, bartender, manager, pairing this section with almost anything on our menu, you can't go wrong.
Yeah,
So really
absolutely.
fun section.